friends, we can't be turned around. We have to keep on marching. Keep on marching. Marching up to Freedom Land. We've come to the point in our service where we celebrate the Word. And today we're going to do so in a fashion where we do what we call an just talkback. And I want to invite our guests and some of our own up to the pulpit. Have a comfortable chair. So we as a family can have a little justice talk. I'm going to invite Darrell Bolden, Pastor Judy Cummins, Miss Ashley Janae Davis, Miss Erica Johnson, and Miss Charlene Oliver to come and join us. Have a seat in our living room.
All right, now.
Because for a justice-seeking congregation, sometimes we need to have come to Jesus people. We need to confront the issues that are confronting the people that we're here to serve. Would you agree? Miss Ashley here. I forgot to say my own dear sister, Reverend Charisma Johnson. That's all right. Charisma, please. Charge it to my head and not the heart.
That's all right.
So as I form the questions, I really realized that it's best to be a little open-ended. Because in the end, we hope to have enough time to give the audience an opportunity to really talk back to ask the question if they will. And I did want to mention that everyone who wanted one, a sample ballot was supplied, or at least you were given the opportunity to get one as you came in. And if you didn't get one, see me out. But this is the question I have. And I'd like you each to just introduce yourselves in whatever way you feel comfortable, and then answer the question based upon your convictions. What do you see as the most pressing justice issue of the day? And I would like to start with you, Reverend Thompson.
Good morning, church. It is so good to be home. And first, let me say, I want to say thank you for holding me in prayer, my family in prayer, and ask that you continue to hold us in prayer, for our hearts are truly broken by loss and grief. I was thinking about this question this weekend, the most pressing justice issue, and I thought of Martin Luther King's word when he said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. This year, my country, Haiti, it's 10 years since the earthquake, and I was there in 2015, where now Haiti has what's called tent cities. The earthquake 10 years ago demolished properties, demolished homes, demolished roads, where the people of Haiti are literally living in tents. 10 years later, we still have tent city. We're still dealing with the impact of the earthquake. We're also dealing with corrupt leadership, and it's a justice issue. I was thinking about Flint. Flint still got dirty water. Still got dirty water. I was home in Jersey last month, and in the pantry there are boxes and boxes of water because Newark, New Jersey still got dirty water. My mama, who's retired and live alone, can't drink the water out the fountain, and so we're constantly having to buy her water because they're I was thinking about, we have a sitting impeached president, and this is an election season, and there was a list of all of the folks who is in the office, the White House today, who have some type of charges against them because of corruption. I was told in conversation with leaders and some research that we've been doing that Tennessee is number 50 of the states of voter turnout. Number 50 of the states of voter turnout. So when we talk about pressing issue, I don't know if there's one more pressing than the other. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. What often happens in our culture and our society is when a topic is hot, we talk about it and we forget the other stuff. I think for 2020, it is important that we talk about voter rights and election and also the census, yet we still can't stop talking about that there's still children in cages at the border. We can't stop talking about that we still have brothers and sisters who are not safe because transgendered brothers and sisters who are not safe because of who they are. We can't stop talking about the fight for gun laws because children, my baby, was murdered last month, shot and killed, and yet we still have no gun laws that would prevent black mothers grieving, black fathers, black families grieving the loss of their children. So I don't know if there's one pressing issue. I think there are pressing issues that we can't stop talking about, but in 2020 we must talk about the election and also the census.
Tell us about who you are and what's the most pressing issue for you.
My name is Daryl Bolden, and I am the Southeast Regional Organizer with Bread for the World. And Bread for the World is an ecumenical Christian organization that works on hunger in the United States and internationally. And for me, there's, as the Reverend said, there are so many issues today. I've personally participated in Black Lives Matter marches, and I was arrested with the Poor People's Campaign and have participated in a lot of rallies and marches over the years. I think, well, one of the key words for today is intersectionality, meaning the intersection between these issues, because so many of these issues intersect from racial justice to climate justice to poverty to mass incarceration. There are so many issues that intersect today. For the issue that I work on particularly is hunger. Why in the United States should anyone go to bed hungry? Why should any children have to go hungry in a nation as wealthy as the United States? And so much of this does go back to the systems that we have and systems that need reform. For us, hunger is not just a issue of feeding people, it's a moral issue. It's a moral issue. It's in the Bible, we're called upon to call upon governments to be righteous governments. In the Bible, a lot of times righteousness is talked about in terms of righteous rulers and righteous kings. Well, the United States government is the king of our day, is the ruler of our day. And so we call upon our governments to be righteous. Hunger is an issue that goes to the fundamental human right to economic security. That is the fundamental human right and fundamental human dignity of people to be fed, to be safe, to be clothed. 1 in 7 children in the United States are hungry or in food insecure homes. And in Tennessee, 1 in 8 households struggle to put food on the table. And when we talk about hunger, we're talking about not just people who, people receive SNAP benefits, but that does not cover all of their needs. So we're not just talking about people in hunger, in dire hunger. We're talking about people who may struggle to put food on the table certain nights of the week. We're talking about mothers who struggle to feed their children. We're talking about people who may receive benefits, but they still can't feed their families. Just because your own SNAP does not cover a lot of needs for a family. So hunger is more widespread in the United States than we would think. I would call hunger an intersectional issue. It intersects with mass incarceration. It intersects with racial justice. African American families are more likely to suffer from hunger in the United States. It intersects with climate justice. It intersects with, obviously, it intersects with gentrification because of food deserts. So there's hunger. Intersects with gentrification as well. A lot of communities like fresh food and access to food, so food access is another aspect of hunger. So I would say there's so many issues of justice today, so many intersectional issues. Hunger is up there for me since I work on hunger. So I would encourage everyone to look at hunger as one issue that intersects with these other issues. Particularly looking at, I think it's important that we look at food access, food deserts, feeding children. So something our organization is working on is we have our offering of letters where we are encouraging people to write letters about hunger to Congress. So we're writing letters to Congress about summer feeding programs and global nutrition this year. So summer feeding programs, summer EBT, is about giving children a card to access food over the summer rather than the collective summer feeding. We want to also give them a card so that they can go and get their own food. And so that's something we're encouraging funding for. So I invite you to join me in helping with the issue of hunger by signing up with us to do an offering of letters, to write a letter to Congress urging them to pass funding for summer feeding, for summer EBT programs.
My name is Erica Johnson. I'm a second-year NZ student and an intern here. And this conversation reminds me of a story of toward the end of his life, Dr. King was in Mississippi. I think it was Allegheny County, but I could be wrong. And he was visiting a Head Start program, and he watched as a teacher took an apple and sliced it really thin and gave each child 2 apple slices and a few crackers because that was all they had to eat that day. And for Dr. King, that was the first moment that he had witnessed poverty like that, where he didn't recognize that the 2-year-old children were malnourished. And he asked the question, why are there 40 million poor people in America? And today we can ask that same question. We can say, why are there more than 40 million poor people in America? And so for me, the most pressing justice issue isn't one issue. It's taking a step back and saying, look, that poverty is structural. It's designed that way. Just like mass incarceration is designed that way. Just like heterosexism is a foundational stone to white supremacy. In the same way that anti-Semitism is a foundational stone. In the same way that capitalism teaches us the lie that we are not our siblings' keepers. And so it's not what is the one issue that I need to give my life to. It's saying, can I look back and see where I fit into this puzzle and how the movement of God does not participate in that. How God moves against those things and we're invited into that. And so for me, the question is, how can I better love my sibling? Right? Which means speaking against the powers that be. But it also means that no one in my circle goes without. And if everyone in my circle has enough, then my circle is too small.
You go home, huh? That was well said. I don't know how to follow that up, but I would say I would agree. I can't put my hand on one issue as the justice issue of the day. But what has been wrestling in my spirit lately is this income inequality that we have in America. How we have moved away from, a system of racism where it's not just black folks at the bottom, it's not just brown folks at the bottom, it's poor people at the bottom. It cuts across race in this issue of classism that is being bubbling up for a while, for the past 40 years in this country. I just finished reading a book called Democracy in Chains. And for those that know, I'm the founder of the Equity Alliance. We're all about building democracy, being inclusive, inviting more voices into our democracy, into our voting process. So we promote voting rights as a means of justice. But I can't help to see how our country has moved away from democracy. We are no longer in a democracy in America. We are ruled by a few, and the rest of us are being ruled. And go to any restaurant, go to any hotel in Nashville, go to your post office, and go to Walmart, look who's serving you. Most of them are black. We are still the servant class in this country. We are still fighting for a livable wage. Since 1619, we have went from $0 to still asking for $15 an hour. And that's still not enough in Nashville. So we need to get money out of politics. That is the thing that really wrestles with me because of corruption. Our rule makers are being bought off left and right by big corporations who want to rule. Go read the Supreme Court case, Citizens United. That was all about giving corporations a voice because they have more money than us.
That's right.
But here's the thing. Voting is the key to all of what unlocks that.
That's right.
When we talk about equity, I don't care if you're Jeff Bezos, I don't care if you're Tom Steyer, if you're Bill Gates, or any of these billionaires out here. All of us are on equal playing field when we talk about voting. Every one of us got one vote, and there's more of us than there are of them. And if we all participate in this democracy, then we can take it back.
That's right.
So we have to keep participating in our elections. We've got 3 of them coming up. Look closely, dig deeper, ask the tough questions. And let me just say this while I'm in a church. Let's stop inviting these candidates to our churches and not inviting them to have a conversation. Like, we need to be asking them when they want to participate and come to our community. We need to make sure that they represent us in our issues, and we are demanding what we want. That's right. So I'm gonna leave it at that for now.
All right. The book that she mentioned, Democracy in Chains, is an excellent read, and several of us in the congregation have read it, and if you haven't, you should. It's a life-changing book. You know, as I think about what the most pressing issue is, when every day we're bombarded by the news, and if we look at the news would suggest that right now, the impeachment of Trump, the arrest of his cronies and his family and friends is the most pressing issue. It's an important issue, but it's not the most pressing for me. We look at the news and we even see that climate change is a pressing issue, and it is indeed, and we need to pay attention. It was 68 degrees yesterday, and it's 32 today. We need to pay attention. It's climate change, but it's also environmental injustice that Reverend Charisma Jean-Marie alluded to with Flint, Michigan. It's not just Flint, it's environmental justice everywhere. And we must pay attention to that. It's important. Still others would suggest that access to affordable health care is the most pressing issue. And it is indeed an important issue because people are dying every day from diseases that could be cured, from treatable diseases. And it is true for us, black and brown people, that when America gets a cold, we get pneumonia. And with pneumonia, without health care, we die. But as I look across the landscape of the country, land of the free, and have had the opportunity to visit other countries and from which I can compare, I believe, for me, that the most pressing issue, and I have a lot of our justice workers here today from Memphis and Nashville, the most pressing issue for me today is the systematic killing of unarmed black and brown bodies. Humanity, image bearers of God, killed, extinguished, snuffed out by the very system that was constructed to protect and to serve. Understanding that these disproportionate numbers of deaths have in fact achieved epidemic status. Now, I would suggest that this is a matter of life and death. You know, the killing of unarmed black and brown bodies is a pressing issue, and if they don't die, and somebody's already alluded to this issue, then they end up in mass incarceration, which is another systematic system designed to extinguish and snuff out a people. I find this matter to be pressing because the truth of the matter is that any epidemic that goes unaddressed has an overwhelming potential to cause extinction. Now understand this, beloved, and in that book you'll see it. It is the plan all along. You do know by 2025 that black and brown people will be the majority. Somebody said it, population control. In the case of the epidemic killing of black and brown, unarmed black and brown bodies, killings that are in fact supported by policies, legislation, white supremacy, white privilege, ways of being in this world, suggests that the only lives that matter are those of European descent. With this thought in mind as a matter of life and death, I believe that this is the most pressing issue that is facing our country. We cannot afford not to speak up and to speak out. I wish Ashley was here today, chair of our Community Oversight Board, even asking for police to have cameras. They already have some dash cameras, but to ask them to have body cameras, all of a sudden, this is impossible or it's too costly. Why? Because black and brown bodies are indispensable, are dispensable. And so we would put a price tag on life. Well, this ain't the first time that we put a price tag on life. My great-great-grandfather was sold in the square in Franklin in Williamson County. to Pulaski, and then put on the front line of a war. This is not the first time that black and brown bodies have been given a value. But it seems that today this value has decreased. 44 cameras, a study, been studied enough. We need to be outraged. Where is our outrage?
Thank you all. Obviously, it is a lot to talk about, and I think the question really was pregnant with your answers, which tell us really that all of the issues of justice are pressing us. But you know, it's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to be about it. So tell us a little bit about the work you're doing towards the issues that matter to you.
So for me today, as pastor of this wonderful New Covenant Christian Church, justice-seeking congregation, my justice work is rooted in my faith. It is empowered by the presence of the Holy Spirit. I had this conversation with justice workers, and my thing is, I don't know how people who are on the front lines of justice do this work without having the power, the dunamis power of the Holy Spirit behind. And without having a congregation who is pushing and praying for you. So my work is primarily done these days through a partnership that our church is a founding member of, and that is NOAH, National Organized for Action and Hope. NOAH is a grassroots organization made up of congregations, labor unions, and nonprofit organizations. It's a justice-seeking organization that seeks to empower the people who make up that organization so that they can become their own advocates. See, is it not enough for me to, Pastor, I saw you on TV, I saw you at the press conference, to be the one out front speaking? All of us need to be speaking, but we have to be trained how to advocate for ourselves. And so that's what we seek to do in NOAH. It's just empowering ordinary, everyday people. Right now, that organization represents about 10,000 people and is a power organization that is helping to transform our society and bring about justice locally, but not just locally. Because we have been able to get some referendums on the ballot and they passed because people did go vote, by the time the referendum gets to the state, it's overturned. And so now what we're realizing we have to do is not just local, but we got to do across the state. And so we have formed Micah in Memphis, Caleb in Chattanooga, and there's an organization that's coming up in Knoxville, all part of our network. And together, because you can't do this work alone. You cannot do this work alone. Together, we're able to address current issues that are disproportionately impacting people on the margins. The three issues that NOAH is addressing, and I'm so glad to see Monica Rainey here today, affordable housing. She's chair of the NOAH Affordable Housing Task Force. We're also addressing the issue of education and economic equity and jobs. But we're also continuing to do the work of criminal justice. And so we have a working task force that Dr. Smallwood and I serve on. I shared with that working task force the other day that because I also serve as chair of the Commission on pro-reconciling anti-racism for our denomination, the Christian Church Disciples of Christ across Tennessee, that this year, 2020, is my year to demand, and I'm not doing it by myself because I got an army behind me, right? To demand that our police department engages in ongoing anti-racism training and to make it mandatory for them to do so. So that's the work that I'm doing right now. A lot more, but that'll do.
So, as I said, I am the founder of the Equity Alliance. We've been around for 3 years, and we entered this space of justice work from left field because, we didn't come with this training. We didn't come with seed money. We just saw a problem in our community, the fact that we are 50th in voter turnout. and said, you know what, we're just gonna do the work. We're not asking questions, we're just gonna do the work. And so we've been out here doing the work, and the work that a lot of people don't want to do. It's the groundwork where you're talking to people at the door, you're going to places and registering people to vote. You are talking about the census, and we're out in the community. So what we do is, again, around voting rights work. We are doing the ground game around electoral mobilization. So we registered 91,000 folks as part of a coalition in 2018, part of the Tennessee Black Voter Project, to register folks, because we got to get people in the game first. We got to get them in the game, and then we can talk about, let's go vote. Let's have that conversation of informing people. We do voter education work. We launched last year a program called Black Citizenship in Action. And it's all based around, what does it mean to be a citizen in America as a Black citizen? What does the Constitution say that is owed to us? What does the 15th, the 14th Amendment say about our citizenship and our rights? And how do we take action from that? So that is a training sort of strategy session around strategic civic action. And we teach people those tools. We also have our voter guide. We publish a voter guide every election. And this year we're expanding out of Nashville. Our goal is to be a statewide organization, and we do work across the state. So we'll have a Nashville voter guide. You can go to nashvillevoterguide.com and you can download your free source. We've done the homework for you on who the candidates are, what they look like, who they represent, where you need to go vote. All of those things are in our guide, and it's free. We're going to do a Chattanooga voter guide. We're going to do a Memphis voter guide this year. So we are doing the democracy work. One of our biggest things we're working on this year is voter rights restoration, because we know there's folks in our community. We got cousins. I got a sister-in-law that's sitting in Tennessee prison for women right now. She's not going to be able to vote when she come out next year. And so we got to do the work of making sure that we restore citizenship back to the people who completed their sentences. They deserve a second chance to be a part of this community. So we have a bill, actually it's going to be on the docket next Tuesday, January 29th. If you want to show up to the Capitol with me, join me at the House Judiciary Committee hearing. It's at 3:30 at the Cordell Hall building. It'll be coming through the House. Representative Curcio, Michael Curcio is the bill's sponsor. We are advocating for legislation that will remove fines, fees, restitution, and most importantly, child support as a condition of getting your voting rights back. So, it has strong bipartisan support, which is, what we need to get anything passed in the conservative legislature. But if we remove those fines and fees that people owe as a condition of getting their rights back, we'll be able to free at least 330,000 people in Tennessee. Now, they still owe that child support, because the babies need their money. But to participate in democracy should not have a price tag on it as a poll tax. And that's what we're doing. So once we can get that through the House, it'll go through the Senate, and we'll need everybody's support to make sure when it gets to the House and Senate floor that it passes in Tennessee. We did it in Florida. They did it in Kentucky last month. We can do it in Tennessee. So I need y'all's support.
My role right now is mainly I speak, I write, and I paint. And I provide some chaplaincy to some organizers. And the work is really important. But the stories that we tell about the work are also important. And so I think of my role right now as how do we connect the dots between what happened in 1619 to what happened 200 years ago to what's happening right now and what happened long before then, right? It's been around a long time. And so I think that the stories that we tell really matter because they sustain us. We talk about how our faith gives us the power to speak, gives us the power to move, the power to do. But if we don't know why, then we're just lost. And then our children won't know why. And so our stories matter. And they're reflected in our litanies, in our songs, and in the ways in which we live our lives.
Well, Bread for the World is a faith-based organization, and we do our work, as I was saying earlier, basically through the offering of letters. So our offering of letters campaign is ongoing now, and we are asking you to write letters to Congress. While letters are the most effective way to reach legislators, it's been found to be the most effective way, other than meeting with them face to face. And you write a personal letter that includes a story, and that's very effective to Congress. And so our global nutrition campaign, bringing together global nutrition, our global nutrition campaign, and our domestic nutrition campaign, by asking that these letters are of concern, partly global nutrition and partly the summer EBT program. So we're bringing together childhood nutrition internationally and in the United States. And the summer EBT program, as I was saying, basically is issuing what is like an EBT card to a child to be able to go and feed themselves over the summer, to be able to go and purchase food items.
Do you have a template if churches wanted to do a mass writing that we could do that?
I do, yeah.
Do you have that with you today?
I do.
All right, so we'll get together with you.
And so that's one way we're doing it. We also have our annual advocacy summit, which I would love to invite you to be more part of Bread for the World. At last year's advocacy summit, FISC students came up to participate. So we had the participation of FISC students, and we had the participation of FISC students the year before that. FISC has been a regular participant in our advocacy summit. And we also invite you to make phone calls and just highlight with Congress the issue of hunger. If you don't put something on Congress's radar, they sometimes assume that their constituents may not necessarily be concerned with the issue. So you have to put it on their radar. So, like I said, we consider hunger a justice issue and a moral issue. And I thank you for your support and look forward to collaborating with you on ending hunger. We have as our goal to end hunger by 2030. It's an achievable goal. Hunger can be ended. It's an achievable goal. There's enough resources in the world. There's enough food in the world to end hunger. It's just a matter of finding the political will to do so. And so we're fighting to end hunger by 2030. And we appreciate your support in doing so. Thank you.
I work for Garrett Bennett Center, Director for Racial Justice Ministries, and my work is towards this idea that how do we care for ourselves in a fragmented world? This world is broken all around. I tell people all the time, I get paid to talk about racism. I get paid to talk about racism. There's no threat or risk for me to talk about racism. But many of my colleagues, many of my friends who work in the corporate world, it's a risk. And many of us, we're not, I get paid to go to trainings and I get paid to read and research around racism, white supremacy. Most folks are not. Those words, those ideas, you hear them in the news, but that's not our everyday world or language. And so for me, when I came to Garrett Bennett, I said, I can be a program director. I do that well. But that's not what this work calls for. We have enough events. And we leave these events and it's the now what. I'm looking to create experiences that transform people's lives. And one of the first things that I realized a need was in Nashville. I was out with my girls and we were having a social hour and I was looking at people. I was in a room, Black professionals, and we were drinking a lot. And it's okay to drink now. We're disciples, but it was a lot. And for me, the discerning eye, it was something beyond that. And so I started to ask the question, where do Black people go to have safe conversations about their experiences in the workplace? Racism and sexism, and where do people go? And I couldn't really find too many spaces. And so I created an experience where it's called Brunching While Black. And it's an experience where it's invite only, and I invite Black professionals, particularly those who are on the front lines, who are doing this work, and they're exhausted. And there's no place of self-care. And Scarrett Bennett, if you are familiar with Scarrett Bennett is a conference retreat center. And the moment you walk on that campus, there's an anointing of healing and respite on that campus. And I wanted to use that as part of my work. So creating spaces for Black professionals to come to be safe and to be affirmed of their experiences. Implicit bias, it's not tangible, Doc. You can have an experience and you're like, did that just happen? I know that happened because I was Black. But you really can't point to, and sometimes you'll think you're crazy. That's what racism had, you think you're crazy. In a room full of white people, right? And so we create space for Black people to come to be affirmed, to tell their story. And for this testimony, I had someone who participated in Brunching While Black, and they said it was healing that I received that I did not know my soul needed. And so for me, that's important, to create experiences where healing is possible. One of the first things I said I wanted to do when I got to Scarrett Bennett was, I wanted to plan a grief retreat for Black mothers. Black moms are heartbroken because disproportionately they're losing their children due to gun violence. And it's not just police brutality and police shooting. It's right around the corner. Young Black brothers are killing each other. Girls too, but the streets is after our sons. And I'm a living testimony. I didn't know 6 months later I would be burying my nephew. I create retreats for Black mothers specifically around gun violence, because here's what I know about Black women. Black women are always at the table with any movement. Any movement that happens, where change happens, you can't have a movement without Black women. And Black women's hearts are broken. Black women, we are walking, and someone told me the other day, you look good, I got that new wig, or you look good, you must be okay. I just lost my baby. My heart is broken. Just because I'm functioning does not mean I'm okay. Right. And oftentimes we put these narratives around Black women, you're strong Black women, and we assume we're okay, but we're not. And so I would create space for Black women, Black moms, Black women whose hearts are broken because they lost a loved one due to gun violence, where we create space where they can come and we offer the ministry of presence. One of the specific things that I'm doing this year, real quick, civic engagement. It is so important this year in 2020 that we do the work around voter turnout, but also the census. It is just important to fill out the census than it is for you to go to the polls. And so I'm working with groups of leaders and organizations right here in the city where there's so much work that's already being done. A huge nod to Charlene and her team with Equity Alliance, who done, the first organization and names that I heard when I came back to the city was Equity Alliance and Tequila and Charlene. So much amazing work to be done, and yet there's still so much work to do. We're still number 50. And so really pushing in innovative and creative ways around how do we get our people to the polls. So here's some things that I want to challenge my church to do. It's not just getting people to the polls, but we also need people who volunteer to work the polls on election day. You ever go to the polls and you don't see anyone that look like you and you got a question, you uncomfortable to ask that question? So how do we, right, meet that need of making it a little bit more easy for people like us to get to the polls, right? Another thing is the census. It is so important. It is so important that we do the census this year. Why is it important? I'm so glad you asked. Because here's the deal. The system does not need any help to keep us out. The system does not need any more help, right? The system is designed to not count us in. And so when you don't fill out your census, what you're doing is helping a system that already leaves you out. And so research shows ages 1 to 5 are often left out. So fill out those census. April 1st is Census Day. It's the day that in terms of where you live on that day is what will be referred to as your address for the census. April 1st is a very important day. And so we are so overly blessed here at New Covenant, because New Covenant creates spaces in the worship spaces like this to do that. But a lot of our cousins go to churches where we never talk about census, and we never do, and we don't make that connection between civic engagement and Christian responsibility. Beloved, it is our responsibility as Christians to be civically engaged. So fill out our census, go to the polls, and have conversations with our family, friends, our community, that they're also doing the same.
Thank you so much.
And can I piggyback off of that? We're also doing census work as well. We're going to be in Murfreesboro, Clarksville, Nashville, and Memphis doing census work as well. But I want to speak to the importance of the census. And it really hit home for me this year. On January 1st of this year, I got on a conference call with my uncle. He called us together as a family, and he said, I got some new information for you that we found our great-great-grandfather. And it was such a moment for me, because I've always wanted to know, like, who am I? Where do I come from? And I'm still asking that question. But at least I have a name now. I have a name. I used to just know my grandmother's mother. Her name was, Ola. But now I know who Francis was, Francis Taylor. He was born in the 1700s. But you know how we found them? Census records. So when we talk about who are we as a people and where we come from Africa. They brought us over here, and we are a lost people. But we got to be found. And we want our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren to know who we were today. We got to fill out that census. That's right. So make sure your family counts in this country.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Can we give them all a hand?
Let's just give our panel a hand again. I want to thank Dr. Teresa Smallwood, our Associate Minister for Justice, Social Justice, who is doing a fabulous job. Dr. Charisma Jean-Marie, Reverend Charisma Jean-Marie said, here at New Covenant, we do take the time to do this work. Just want to have just a few minutes for just a response to what we've heard. We were hoping that you all would have a chance to ask a few questions, but we're trying to shorten that time, so I'm going to shorten what I have to say. This Justice Talkback and Response is designed to shed light on systemic realities that have brought us to this current cultural reality. To demonstrate to our brothers and our sisters and our siblings in Christ that the gospel compels us to see, to attempt to understand, and then to act with a transformational, redemptive paradigm of social justice. Beloved, this is what it means to be Christian, to be a follower of Christ. Too many pause at the idea of social justice and discard it as the radical ideology of those with political agendas. But as a gospel believer, I cannot, as I said earlier, imagine Christianity without the drumbeat of justice front and center in the mission of God and Christ, who came to save sinners. Yes, Christ came to save sinners, but he also came to create a just society that reflects the nature and the character of God. Our God is a God of love, just, good, faithful, near to us, and so much more. And we should aspire to be all that God has shared with us to be, and we should aspire to try to reach that same in our society. Read Isaiah 58 a little later. And when you read it, it is very clear that this God we serve is the God of justice. It is clear that justice for the oppressed, the afflicted, and the poor are at the heart of God. If you want to know the heart of God, that's the heart of God. It's God's desire for the world that he created, that it would indeed be the beloved community that he shared, the dream that he shared with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Those who argue that we just need to repent and trust God and then our nation will be healed again, fail to realize that when the gospel takes hold, God means for it to create something in us and through us. We are called to be a redeemed people, working towards a redeemed, just society. Your kingdom come. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven is about so much more than a personal salvation. And our scriptures, our sacred texts, make that quite clear. Listen. I think I'm going to skip that piece. Fairness is determined by all having equality in status and material. Most probably assume that this is the idea of social justice. To be sure, it is probably the most controversial, and so therefore that's the view that is exploited by the media. But there is a biblical view of social justice. And that biblical view is our mandate for social justice. We are the children of God who are mandated to do the work of justice. Listen, when change happens, when hearts and minds are transformed, when people work to change the injustices in our society, as believers, we have a responsibility to act and to do so with purpose, with understanding, with the mandate of the God of gospel justice blowing at our backs. The biblical mandate is this: go. We love to recite Matthew 28, go, therefore, make disciples. But we're not just making disciples to sit in these pews. As my pastor who has gone home to be with the Lord would say, to sit, soak, and sour inside of these four walls. Disciples are commanded to go beyond these four walls. Justice, to do justice, that is to make right that which is wrong. And so you use your time, you use your talent, and you use your gifts to do that work. When we look at our sacred text, we look at our sacred text to define for us what is right. That's the standard. We don't have to look far to see it because Jesus is our standard. Jesus demonstrates a beautiful example for us to follow in the New Testament as one who cared for the outcast, reached out with compassion to help those who are most often overlooked, the marginalized, the invisible, challenging injustice and valuing diversity, speaking truth to power, pulling down empires. He physically and spiritually rescued those who are in need. Listen, we must use our power and our influence to dismantle thousands of years of social tradition where exploiting the poor and disposing of bodies considered less than is an everyday occurrence. When we look at the life of Jesus and the mandate given throughout the scripture, it is clear that Christ's followers are called, as I said, to do justice, to take action, to confront evil, to care for the vulnerable, to make right that which is wrong. This mandate, beloved, is not new. It is not a cultural fad or something that simply trends today. In the Old Testament, the prophet said it. Give justice to the weak, to the fatherless. Maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute. Psalm 82:3. Learn to do justice, seek justice, correct oppression, bring justice to the fatherless, and plead the widow's cause. Isaiah 1:17. He has told you what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. Micah 6:8. Beloved, we do not live in a just society. And saying we're much better off than what we were isn't helpful when so much more needs to be done. Christ died on the old rugged cross over 2,000 years ago. And when Christ died, he imputed his righteousness to us, making us right with God. Beloved, it is in our DNA to do justice, to love kindness, and to be the hands and the feet and the heart of God in this unjust world until the beloved community that God created, that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. dreamed of, becomes a reality for all. If not you, who? If not now, when? What do you want? Justice. When do you want it? Now. Praise be to God. Amen.